Head coaches make hundreds of decisions every day. None of them should be made alone. This podcast exists to be your inner circle. Welcome to Fourth and Three, real conversations coaches have when the office door is closed. I'm Randy Jackson, and I've spent 33 years in the coaches. I know this job is far more than plays and practice plans. It's about handling issues the general public never sees. Pull up a chair and let's get started. And Fourth and Three is designed for one thing. We don't care about Keith Allen. We don't really want to know where he went to high school and what his hopes and dreams are. We don't care if Keith likes to walk on the beach at sunset. But we do want to know how Keith can help us solve problems. That's what Fourth and Three is always going to be about. And today I thought, okay, Keith started the football program at Schreiner. How many months ago, Keith, did you get the job?
I'm 1 week away from being there for a full year.
Okay, so this
February
is
17th.
And so I texted Keith and I said, you could solve so many problems. Which one do you want to do? And he goes, man, pick one. I said, how about hire a staff? Because I think this is going to be a fascinating topic. When you got the job February 17th, you had zero staff.
Zero.
And we've got to hire coaches. I have not been good in my history of hiring coaches. When people sat down across from me, I tend to believe what they told me. I learned to ask better questions. You can't mess it up. We got a guy like Shep on here who's going to be a head coach one day, and this is an important session for him. So, Keith, give us your 60-second flyby of who you are and what Schreiner football is about.
You guys can look me up, coachallen.com. I'm not going to waste any of our airtime on that. Currently the head coach at Schreiner University, previously at Klein High School for 4 years as every position on the offense in my last year OC, head coach at King's Academy, and head coach at Southwest Baptist University. The biggest thing from hiring coaches, I'll hit one big nail on the head and I'll swing a big hammer on this, is like Randy said, you got to get it right. The wrong person in the room destroys the room. And you can't be wrong. So you got to do a lot of different ways. And, everybody's in a different situation when you hire a staff for what you need at that particular point in time and what you're looking for. My mindset was a lot different than when I hired a staff at King's Academy High School, and it was different than when I was trying to hire a staff at Southwest Baptist. So, every situation is unique, but there's some things that we can talk about today that will give you some baselines that I believe in that have helped me have a good staff. I think I've only had to fire 3 guys in my coaching career. So really 2, one of them, we kind of shook hands and pushed them out the door. So that was a little bit more cordial. So yeah, there's a multitude of different ways, and I can just go right into like this year's staff, or if you want to start asking questions, Randy, I'll do it either way.
Yeah. So let me just say this. Keith has been the head coach at a Division II university, Southwest Baptist in Missouri, head coach at King's Academy in Florida. And that's where I got to know Keith. He joined Fast and Wide when he was at King's Academy. And pretty cool thing, his wife gets a great job in Texas, and a Fast and Wide contact helps him get a job. And then a Fast and Wide contact really helps him with Schreiner. And so it's
Absolutely.
a great group. And this isn't about Fast and Wide, but it is a great community of coaches. So let's get into this. So you get the job at Schreiner, and on February 17th, about how long was it before you started thinking about your very first move with personnel, and what was your very first move with personnel?
I already had an idea of who I was going to try to bring in at coordinators when I first got hired. The position coaches were wide open. I had no idea. So when I got hired at Schreiner, the first thing I had to do was change their mindset of what they wanted to hire. They had a mindset that I needed 3 coaches. And I was like, I need 4. I need 2 on offense, 2 on defense to start this thing out. So I told them, like, I'm going to take over special teams. I'll be the special teams coordinator and the head football coach. I choose that because the head coach, as a special teams coordinator, gets to coach every kid in one way or another. So knowing my budget constraints and knowing where I was, knowing how late we were in February, knowing we're in the state of Texas, I targeted immediately guys that were retired or going to retire head coaches in the state of Texas. I needed to establish instant credibility within the San Antonio community as fast as I could. I needed to establish instant credibility in the Houston area as fast as I could, because those were going to be my two big recruiting areas. So luckily for me, the gentleman who joined the Fast and Wide and asked me about my autopsy report, I got to know David Jones. He was the head coach at Tivy at the time. He calls me out of the blue and asks questions. I did a Zoom talk about our postseason stuff and something else the year before. He calls me out of the blue. It was the week before last year's Fast and Wide clinic. Never met him face to face. He calls me and says, "Hey, are you interested in being a head coach in college again?" I was like, yes, I am. He goes, "Schreiner University has a job open." I was like, never heard of it. He goes, "Well, it's a D3 school. They're starting football." I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I'm interested. Fast forward, we go to the Fast and Wide clinic. I've talked to David. I got an interview set up, and he's thinking about transitioning to retiring. The head coach at Klein, the guy I was working for the last 4 years, that kind of hired me because of the other Fast and Wide connection, hired me pretty much sight unseen. I mean, I met him, but he didn't know anything about me. He was a head coach at Klein for the last 13 years, and he was retiring. So I got the job at Schreiner. I go back to Klein and tell Shane, "Hey, look, I'm looking for a defensive coordinator if you know of anybody interested." And he goes, "Well, I may be interested." And that was what I was hoping for. I wanted him to show interest instead of me showing interest. He already had plans to move to East Texas and retire. So Shane and I talked about it. He came up, checked it out. He has a deer lease out in the area. I got him on board and I hired him. What I was looking for at Schreiner was I needed Texas high school coaches, preferably ones that were going to get their TRS because it could offset their payment. I didn't have to pay them the premium of a college coordinator. I could hire a better assistant, if that makes any sense. So that was my mindset. I hired David Jones to be my offensive coordinator, and I hired Shane Hallmark to be my defensive coordinator to save the university money because they were under TRS contracts or, their contracts. I hired them starting March, the middle of March, at part-time. So it didn't trigger any issues with their contracts. So I hired them both part-time. And you guys know, if you've ever been a head coach and wait, they really don't have a lot for you to do once they hire the new guy. So both of those guys were able to recruit from their offices on a part-time salary for me during the spring. So I was looking for guys that are like me because I knew at Schreiner I was going to have to step away a lot and have a lot of meetings and a lot of building, fundraising, things like that. So I needed two coordinators that were experienced that could run a program in my absence.
Okay. So, let's talk about coordinators.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I used to tell my coordinators. If someone's hiring a staff and you want to start with your coordinators.
100%.
Here's what I used to tell my coordinators, and I want you to tell me your honest opinion if this is fair or not. I need coordinators who are my eyes and ears in the coach's office. At the end of the season, if there's some big issue about an assistant coach that blows up in my face, I'm going to be frustrated with my coordinators if they knew about it and didn't tell me. Do you agree or disagree with that?
100%. I believe your core group, the guys that are going to be with you the longest, your coordinators need to be cut from the same cloth, be able to articulate the same vision and see the same standards as you. If you're having to coach your coordinators a lot on, these are our standards, these are our core values, this, how we want to run a program. If you're spending a lot of time with that with your coordinators, it takes away your job as the head coach to oversee the entire program, and in Texas, to be the athletic director of the entire athletic world. So your coordinators, in my opinion, need to be cut from the same cloth, and you have to make a decision early as the head coach. There's three things you got to make a decision on as the head coach. Number one, am I going to be a play caller? Because that changes how you're going to hire a coordinator. Number two, am I going to delegate play calling and give them complete autonomy? Or number three, am I going to delegate play calling but override it as much as I want? Those are the three types of head coaches I see out there. Somebody that's going to be the play caller, somebody that's going to delegate it, and somebody that's going to delegate it but oversee it, so much that coordinator is probably going to not enjoy it as much. Yeah. So I made the decision early. At the other place, I was the D coordinator, and then I fired myself because I thought I did such a bad job. That's why I said I'll take over special teams, because the special teams coordinator's got to get approval from the head coach to do anything fun anyway. Yeah. So I made the decision early. I'm going to hire coordinators and let them do their job. So I did that at SBU. I did that at Kings Academy. At Kings Academy, I ran the offense, but I hired a defense coordinator and let him do his thing. So luckily at Schreiner, I knew the offense coordinator was doing the same stuff. And now his verbiage is a little different than mine, but I told him, I was like, it's yours. You own it. You teach me, right? If I'm asking you to play fast, I can't make you change your terminology. So I gave that up completely because, here's the deal. If you've been doing something 20 years, Randy, and then I'm like, okay, I want you to do what you've been doing. I want you to play fast and wide, but I use this verbiage instead. You have to sit there in your mind and translate, right? So I was like, not doing that. I will be the translator. You do it fast as you can in the terminology you're used to. Same with our defense coordinator. I knew I wanted to run a certain structure on defense. I wanted to run a multiple 4-2 defense. He'd ran that at Klein. I said, hey, it's yours. Here's some of the non-negotiables, but how you call it and this, that, and the other, that's you. I'll learn it from you. So both of my coordinators were given a pocket of here is what you have to play within. Other than that, it's 100% on you. We'll touch base during the week and, we'll talk about during our meetings, but it's the autonomy as a coordinator. And that's my belief. That's how you get buy-in from your coaches. Your coordinators have to be cut from the same cloth. So like you said, Randy, when I'm not there, it's getting said the same way. And if I step away, practice is going to start at 3:15, no matter if I'm there or not. They don't need me there to blow the whistle. Any of my coordinators can take it over.
Now, this may be different in college, and I think this is huge for someone hiring a staff. If you're hiring coordinators, you can't miss. You can replace a linebacker coach after a year. It's not optimal, but you can't be replacing coordinators. Here's what happened to me one time, Keith. We had a magical season somewhere. My DC was really good. The next year, he was still really good, but he got to where he talked to me less and less. After year 2, one day I'm in the coach's office, and my defensive coordinator comes in late. He's got a PE class. He comes in late. He puts his stuff up. He grabs his whistle. He messes with some papers. I'm sitting at the big conference table in the middle of the coach's office, and he never speaks to me. And he walks out. And in my mind, I said, I'm getting rid of this guy. I'm not going to have a defensive coordinator who doesn't like me. Is that fair to you? Do you feel the same way?
3 or 4 things to that. Number one, if it was a one-off, I would pull them up and say, what's going on? Know your people, right? The way of the shepherd, know your flock. Now, if that's an occurring deal, use this analogy and you kind of hit it. If my staff walks into the office for a meeting and there's one person that shows up and I get that cringe feeling, something's got to change. You guys know what I mean by that cringe feeling? If that's an ongoing feeling you have with somebody, you're going to address it head on because we're the head coach and we're going to have the tough conversation. Number 2, if it doesn't get any better and they're ignoring me or they're avoiding me or there's some of that tension that you probably felt in that room when he walked in and out, life's too short not to have a great staff that has cohesion. Are there going to be days where it's going to get heated? Yeah, but if those days are more than the others, you've got to make a staff change because it's not an individual problem then, it's going to become a staff problem. Yeah. The biggest thing I talk about is proximity bias. That's where the offensive staff and the defensive staff, don't gel. And there's a lot of things I do within our system to keep that proximity bias from happening. But like you have a defensive coordinator that's giving you the cold shoulder over and over and over again. Well, that's going to affect your culture and standards. You see him and you just don't I don't want to deal with this guy anymore. So when those happen more often than not, you have to make the tough decision to protect the program.
Yeah, trust me, guys, this is a 2-year thing. If you're getting that vibe, your defensive coordinator, unless you're on the defensive side, he's got to go be the head coach of the defense. And you want someone in that room when you're not in there who's a fan of yours. If you're hiring a staff, don't hire the greatest defensive coordinator you can find who isn't your type of person. When it was time to go home, I went home. So I'm not looking for coordinators to go have a Coke with afterwards, but guys that enjoy being around each other. It's very important your coordinators enjoy being around you and vice versa. That takes me to this statement, Keith. When you started hiring coaches, let's go to position coaches. Let's go O-line, because I really feel like O-line coach, you can't miss on that either. It's basically a third coordinator. Did you open it up to anybody and everybody, or did you Find guys that you trusted. Tell coaches how they should look for assistant coaches.
Well, I think if you have a pocket of people you trust, you go to your pocket of people first before you open it wide up. David and Shane didn't really have a lot of, their connections weren't gonna fit for us. So I opened it up at this place. I went through resumes. I probably called 3 people and talked to them, and then I had a high school coach he was at Slywoods. I drove down. I was recruiting Houston. I drove down to Houston, and I just told the guy, "I'll be there Saturday morning. Can you make it?" And he goes, "How do I need to be dressed?" I was like, "I don't care. Just let's go to one of your classrooms and get video ready and get on the board." So I drove up to his school on a Saturday. I was already there for recruiting. Popped on the campus, and he handed me a book. I looked at the book. I put the book to the side and said, "Okay." And then I went through my standard organizational process, and I'll share that in just a second. I interviewed him, and I said, "Okay, I like him." I told David Jones, he was already going to be my de facto offensive coordinator, even though it was part-time. I told David, I was like, "Call him. And if you get an off vibe, let me know. If you don't get an off vibe, we're going to bring him on campus. I'm probably going to offer him the job." And so the first thing I'll do in in an interview is I really just jump into it. I'm like, "Okay, this is your realm. I'm a freshman. Go. Here's what I'm a coach of. I don't know anything. You're the O-line coach. Go." I don't want them to have a prompt response. I don't want them to have their little manual they go to and they flip the pages and tell me crap that's in a book. I want to know, how are you going to respond right now? He goes, "Do you want you on the board?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm a freshman. Go." I want to see how they react. I want to see how they coach me. And then I'll ask them after that, based on what they said or did. And then I'll get into, okay, what core values are these kids going to know when they get done with you? And then the one I always ask O-line coaches, if I gave you 30 minutes, take me through your individual. I don't want you to look at a book. I don't want you to look at your little manual. You got 30 minutes of individual time. What are you going to do? I want your everyday drills. And then I want you to coach me on your everyday drills. Scheme and stuff we'll fix, right? We can get the verbiage done. I'll let them pick a play and dissect the play and use all the verbiage and all the vernacular they're going to use and how they're going to block power or zone or whatever. But day one, first meeting, I just jump into it. Don't let them have anything. And then we'll dive into the video and things like that. But I want to know how they're going to respond. I'm a big believer of touch points throughout campus. Now, I didn't have the advantage to do this at Schreiner, but everywhere else I did, my wife has always had a meal with me. My wife has the UG factor. If she doesn't like them, I don't hire them. At SBU, we joke. There was one guy, she didn't go on a dinner with him. I hired him and it didn't work out. And she blames me. She's my factor for the it feeling. My coaches, I'll have my coordinators get involved because they got to work with them. And then my wife, because she can kind of decipher things that maybe I get overshadowed because they have this resume. And she just gets the, if they're going to fit model, if that makes any sense.
I'm a paint by numbers guy.
Yeah.
Everything's got to be really simple for me. If I was applying for a job with Keith Allen at Schreiner, you were going to interview me, then I'm going to interview with you. If you like me, you're bringing me on campus.
Yep.
And if you continue to like me, we're having dinner with your wife.
Yeah, we're probably having dinner either way because that's kind of how I end it. But let's go to the resume. Again, I may be totally different than everybody else. I don't really care who your references are because my guess is if they're on your reference sheet, you've already made sure they're going to be pro you, right? So I think your references are pointless. What I look for.
If someone has a reference, because that's a great point. References don't really matter to me, but let's say Rusty has a reference of Jimmy Johnson. Because somehow Rusty knows Jimmy Johnson. He's never coached with Coach Johnson, but he somehow knows him. Should you put that person on your reference sheet?
If they're going to advocate for you and jump on the table for you, yes. If you're just trying to name drop, absolutely not.
Yeah, I mean, and how could Jimmy Johnson say a lot about someone if you've never worked together?
I have Gary Patterson on mine, right? And that's in Texas, that's kind of a big deal. But Gary will advocate for me. If I call Patterson, like when he got the USC deal, I called him and he picked up the phone and we had a conversation.
But you GA'd for him.
I just know a guy random now. You're not going to impress anybody.
You work a camp for Schreiner and somehow you can put Keith Allen. Keith can't really advocate for you.
Right. If Jimmy Johnson was on there, I'd call him just to talk and be like, hey, I got your number. But I'm going to look for touch points of people I know that maybe worked with you or worked against you. I'm going to look at your resume and I'm going to look at your timeline more than anything. And I'm going to say, oh, so he coached at Emporia State this time, or he coached at Tomball Memorial at this time. Well, that must mean Joe Dale knows him. I'll call him. Hey, what about this guy? Tell me straight up. And your buddies will tell you straight up in either direct or indirect ways. I had a guy from Houston Christian. He had references from Houston Christian. He was a defensive coach, but he didn't have the defensive coordinator who coached with me.
Oh.
So I called the defensive coordinator and he goes, no. I said, what about the kid's name? And he goes, no. I'm done.
Yeah.
I don't have to go any further.
That's a good point too. On your references, your present direct supervisor. So let's say it's Rusty, the defensive coordinator at Madisonville. If Rusty's principal and athletic director, maybe not superintendent, but principal and athletic directors, direct supervisors, head coach is not on that reference sheet, 19 red flags. Agree?
It depends. If they meet a lot of criteria, I would want to find out, are you just shopping around and didn't want them to know?
Okay.
And then, but then that's a red flag because why are you not letting them know? Because I will tell you this, though. I've worked for some people that said, you better not be looking for a new job, right? Wow. And if you are, you're not going to have one here. So those are case by case, but it's definitely, there's a red flag somewhere down that line. It could be they're trying to hide something one way or the other, right? So I agree with you, but I wouldn't necessarily negate that completely.
How could someone put in their resume, my direct supervisor is not on this list because he doesn't want me looking for another job? Could someone do that?
I've been asked before not to share until we get further along the line. If we get past this point, I will have that conversation. I would say, hey, if I bring you on campus, I'm going to have to call your people, your school, whoever you're working for, because I owe that guy the common courtesy. So you better make sure they know before I call. I don't want to put you in I've done that before. Like, hey, I'm fixing to call your head coach to tell him I'm going to ask for you to be on campus.
Okay.
And you learn a lot by that. How are they going to respond?
Yeah. Coaching football is not splitting the atom and curing cancer. When I have a stack of resumes and I interview an O-line coach, I'm going to try to interview 5 people. It's a big deal. For me, I don't need necessarily the best O-line coach of the 5. I need the best one who's going to get along with me, shared values, who's going to help me raise kids. I need the right fit. It's really not hiring the right O-line coach, it's hiring the right fit. How do you find out? And I love what you said. Put me on the board, pretend I'm a freshman. But now how do you find out if they're the right fit? Are they going to have the O-line over to their house once a week? Because they can tell you all this stuff. You can't miss on that.
Well, you take them out and do different things. You let them meet different people and you observe how they interact, right? You take them to lunch with one group of coaches and then you take them to dinner with your spouse or something. You can just see their interactions. Are they outgoing? Are they introvert? Are they going to be nice? Are they complaining? What do they talk about on the car ride when you're going from point A to point B? I think you're assessing all those things. Like I tell people all the time, if you're on an interview, you're on an interview the entire time. And so you get to see how those people interact with different people. Like in college, we'll take them across campus and let them meet different people. We may stop in the open gym where the student rec center is and see how they interact with the kids. But you're looking for the touch points, right? Because I can sell anybody. Give me 2 hours. I can sell you a story and win you over. You know, I have a great example. When I was at SBU, I needed an O-line coach. And there was a guy from up north, the resume nails. He sent me a video. Awesome. Had a phone interview with the guy. Loved him. OC had a phone interview with him. Loved him. We bought the plane ticket. Flew him out. This is big at Division II. I'm paying for all this stuff. We put him in the room and I say, I'm a freshman. Go. We're no huddle. I mean, if he'd done his research at all, we're a no huddle football team. I was like, I'm a freshman. Day one. Go. He says, the first thing I'm going to do is teach him how to get in this huddle. I looked at my OC like, this guy, whatever. So I let him go through the whole process. And I was like, okay, you just wasted 10 minutes. We don't huddle ever. Maybe you didn't know that. Maybe you didn't do your due diligence. I'm not going to hold that against you. Go on. And he got flustered. And in the interview, Randy, you'll love this. In the interview, he flips the dry erase marker and goes, I suck. Wow. I was like, Robbie, you can take him back home to the hotel. Then the guy had the audacity to call me Say, I'm guessing I didn't get the job. I was like, nope, you did not. Every check mark up until we got him in the board and put him in a different situation was a yes. I thought it was going to be done. I thought hey, this kid hits every check mark we're looking for on the resume. He said the right things on the phone. He said the right things. We flew him out. He looked the part, whatever that part is for line coaches. You look the part, and he goes in and he sucks. He's awful. And I wouldn't have known that if I'd have let him present to me. He probably would have presented fine. He'd had a little PowerPoint, little video clips, and he'd have been able to mark on the board. But when I took him off script, that's what you want to do in your interview process. You want to take him off script. In football, it ain't always on a script. It's going to hit the fan. So I do everything in my power on the interview process to get him off script.
This is why you should be listening to 4th and 3, because getting them off script is gold. One time I read a book by John Gruden, and I can't remember the name of it. Maybe it's Do You Really Love Football? But he said when he puts coaches on the board, if they can't draw the oval right, it's a huge red flag. If you draw a legit circle, you're not getting the job. Draw like an egg, because we have to be able to draw the defenses. Okay, here was one of my go-to questions. What's the biggest mistake you ever made?
Absolutely.
How did you learn from it? If they made the biggest mistake with somebody else, they're not going to do it again with me. What's a go-to question that you have?
Oh, those are great. What was the biggest mistake you ever made in a game? How did you fix it? How did you move forward? One of the things I love to know is if I called a former player of yours, what are they going to say? What are they going to remember? The mistake one's great. What's your biggest weakness? I work too hard. That didn't really help me solve any problems there. I like to ask, what's the biggest problem you ever saw for your head coach? How are you going to deal with discipline? I usually ask them to give me an example if they have. And then what's the one example I used this for this job. I said, what are you going to do when the kid says no? What if you're going to do when the kid is disrespectful to you at the practice field? Because I had young coaches. How are you going to respond if they say something back to you? Because nobody's ever asked them that question.
I love that. It's a scenario. I think you should ask as many scenarios as.
So, I want to know, how are you going to handle a kid? Are you going to yell at him? What are you going to do? There's no right or wrong answer, right? It's just a scenario. What are you going to do? And what I was looking for in my mind was pull them aside, figure out what's going on. If that's a one-off situation, if that's unusual, probably there's something going on that we need to address before we ever address the disrespect, right? Why are you acting this way? So I don't really care what their answer is as much as do they have a plan when that happens? Because we can help them with the plan, but I want to know what these kids can do or what these coaches can do. And Eric Luster said this, well, one of our things that I love, and I used it in an interview the other day, be a plate cleaner. You tell me you're going to do laundry, but when it hits the fan, are you going to do the laundry?
Yeah, that was my next question. How do you know? A good friend of mine, Jason Bachtold, Houston Christian, says he has the same problems we have in high school. Some coaches are clock watchers, and they want to do their job and go home. How do you know? How do you ask if a candidate's going to be a plate cleaner and just help solve issues? And even laundry isn't his, but laundry's not done, and he's going to go help with laundry before he goes home.
Right. You do scenario things, but the biggest thing I find is if you're walking around with them, driving around town, all those touch points where you're sitting in that awkward silence where it's not scripted, you get to learn a little bit more about the people. The silence makes them want to talk. So you can learn a little bit more about them. And it's your hit or miss, right? I mean, Jesus had 12 apostles and he was wrong on one. That's what I tell people all the time. I had a kid here I hired late and it was all right, but there's no initiative, right? So how do you interview for initiative? You walk them around campus. Do they pick up a piece of trash when you walk by it? Maybe intentionally leave some trash and maybe you see when you walk by it, see what they do, and then you pick it up. There's things you can do to see if they got initiative, because if you have initiative, you're going to pick up trash, right? Like everything's first class and nothing's beneath me. So I'll pick up trash in an interview with somebody when I'm walking by and I see something on our campus, because that's what I'm going to do anyway. But I always want to see if they do that too. Is that a perfect telltale for initiative? No, but it tells you a little bit about their character.
Yeah, this isn't really a question because I wouldn't have an answer to this, but Chris Yeager, who's a friend of all of ours, says at Mountain Brook, he asked candidates to send him practice huddle film where he can see if they're ever on film hustling and running around. And I just thought that was brilliant. Is there anything like that that you could give coaches advice of how to find out if someone's going to be a grinder or not?
You gotta, and that's where I'm a big fan of not maybe not a direct reference, but an indirect reference to those people. Because that's how you got to find out. I mean, I would hate to, if you watch some of the practice film of me, I'm standing there making, being really cerebral, like Tom Landry just talking. You'd be like, God, he doesn't do a damn thing. But you go to inside, you'll see me kind of getting after it. But no, again, I think it's you've got to find somebody you trust, some degree of separation that can give you better insight. Again, I've never trusted references because my assumption is your references have already been prepared that say good things. Again, I've never put anybody on my reference list that I wasn't sure wasn't a pro Keith Allen guy. But I'm always looking for that one off. My buddy was at that school, at a conference school or district school. You can always ask somebody else that's not the head coach. One time I called a receptionist at the athletic department trying to get to the head coach, and I couldn't get a hold of the head coach. And I was like, hey, I got a question for you. What do you think about Tom Anderson? She pauses. That tells me everything I need to know. So I caught her off guard. She was sitting there thinking about how should I play this, right? Well, that tells you everything you need to know. If she would have immediately said, oh, he's one of the greatest guys, does that make sense? Like I wasn't even trying to call her to get that reference, but I was waiting for the head coach and I was on the phone with her and I said, tell me about this guy. No, yeah. They don't have to tell you anything.
So here's why I didn't do a good job. When Shep walked in, I was rooting for him to do well. I didn't really like hiring coaches. I got other things to do. So I'm rooting for Shep to do well. And I'm looking at him through a lens of I'm going to like him. Just like when you flew that guy in. I thought it was a great story. What Shep is wearing to the interview, is that a big deal to you?
You had that on the question. So I've always been one, be professional, whether they're in a suit and tie or whatever. I'll give you a great example. Darnell Walker played in the NFL. He was an OU guy. I knew him from OU. I'm interviewing him. He's the defensive backs coach at Bacone College when they had football. I'm at SBU hiring him to be my DB's coach. He shows up in the interview in jeans, button-up shirt. And I was like, ain't no way I'm going to hire this guy. Zero chance. So I walked in. The biggest thing on the interview process is they're never looking for a reason to hire you. They're looking for a reason to dismiss you.
Yes.
He was dismissed. Right when he walked in, I'm like, I'm done. I ain't hiring this guy. But we talked, and his charisma, his ability to rate to everybody on our campus when we walked around, I mean, he was the most outgoing, shook everybody's hand. And the reference is the reason he was already on campus because he already passed all those checks. And I'm sitting there getting ready to discount this guy because he wore jeans, boots, and a button-up polo instead of slacks, right? I'm fixing to discount this guy, just write him off. We walk across campus. Every administrative assistant falls in love with that guy immediately. You know what I mean? And in my mind, that changed my whole philosophy because when he walked in to come up to the football office to get on the board, I was ready to just mark him off. But nope, ain't going to work for me. He did a great job on the board. He did a great job with the players. He did a great job when we went to eat, even though he ordered weird stuff. He was great. I mean, he was so good. Blankenship stole him from me at Tulsa. Just quadrupled his salary too, but whatever.
But if you're listening to this and you're interviewing with someone, he had to overcome how he dressed.
He was in a deficit when he walked in the office.
Honestly, I'm a little bit naive. And so Shep walks in and I'm looking for reasons to hire him. I really want us to arm in arm and kumbaya. And after a year or two, if you don't like me, I'm going to get rid of you, that type thing. But you just said something better. We should be looking for reasons not to hire someone. So we just went through dress. What are some ways I could have done a better job interviewing coaches? What else are you looking for red flags?
Biggest thing we're assuming they're already on campus, right?
Okay,
I was going to say resume is really easy. If you misspell something on a resume, I'm done.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about the modern resume. If someone sends you an old school resume from the 90s, no pictures, and it's just brutal, right? Does that matter to you?
I'll say this. I'm more worried about context than anything, but if you don't know how to do some Photoshop in today's game,
yes,
You can't help me with all the social media crap we have to do in today's game.
Yep.
So that bothers me a little bit. But I'm still looking at context. I don't get over, because you have Photoshop skills and you can throw photos up there and make it trifold and all that. And I do those things too, but I don't discount per se. I read the resume, but in the back of my mind, they're showing me that they don't know how or they can't help me. The social media part, doing
Yeah.
things really cool on PowerPoints and things like that.
You said earlier it's a deficit if you don't have a modern resume. Canva. If you don't know what Canva is, research it, and you can make a modern resume.
And I'm big on, like I made a website, not for resume purposes back in the day, but for recruits, because I could update my coachallen.com faster than I could update the school website. So I have a website. And then I made it a resume as well. I want to see, like, what other values can you add to our program? Can you coach O-line? Awesome. Are you the strength guy? Okay, fantastic. Do you love to be the guru on TikTok or social media? Can you take over the school's Instagram account? Can you be my recruiting coordinator, high school or college? Where is your wheelhouse and how can you benefit my program? What other duties can you do? If we passed, that's where I'm moving forward. Now, the resume passed snuff. I called the people through degrees of separation. You're on my campus. You've knocked out the interview process. You commanded the room. That's the number one thing. You've got to take over the interview to the extent they let you. You've got to dictate the interview. And my philosophy is, I want you to run the show. It's your show right now. Whoever I'm interviewing, it is their show for the next 30 minutes. It's not the Keith Allen show. It's not the Randy Jackson show. It's your show. I'm just an audience member. What are we doing?
Do that. They're very introverted. That's a red flag.
I will throw them some softball tosses and try to get them to go, because what I see is what they're going to be in their first team meeting.
So good, Keith. Get them off script. I mean, he said some really gold nuggets here. Don't let them just do a presentation. They've done that a few times. Get them off script and make it their show, because there are some good introverted coaches out there, but I'm not too fired up about them. I don't want an introvert on my staff. I want kid magnets.
They've got to own the room. It's got to be the best 30 minutes in the meeting room. That hour and a half on the field, it's got to be their best hour and a half. They got to want to be around their coaches. And if they can't command the room, I understand young coaches get intimidated when you have a lot of older coaches you're presenting to because they're nervous. They don't know as much, this, that, and the other. So you got to take it for the scenario and the situation you're in. But do they have the wherewithal to take ownership? Do they have the wherewithal to have initiative to move forward? Do they have the drive to help you in your program? Are they going to clean the lint filter? Like when I got to Klein High School, they hadn't cleaned the lint filter in 20 years, and those things just keep falling. You know what I mean? On the laundry.
Oh, 100%.
And I walked in and Shane goes, "Hey, you got laundry." Cool. First thing I do, maybe it's because I was a previous head coach, I open up the dryer vents and those things are stacked with lint. And I took a brush and I cleaned them all out. Here I am at that time, 46 years old, been a head coach at a college and a high school, won a state championship, and I'm on my hands and knees pulling lint filter crap out because these other coaches were too good to do it.
I love it. Yeah.
I mean, that's my mindset. Are you going to do the little things and help me be successful? If you do, I'm going to do everything in my power to help you be successful.
But if you hire someone who isn't willing to do it, there's really nothing you're going to say in a meeting that's going to convince them. You can't hire that person. They're not going to all of a sudden become non-lazy. You're not going to motivate a grown man to be non-lazy. So you can't screw it up in the interview. And that's what's great about this session is you got to help figure that out.
Yeah. Have them walk around, meet people. The biggest thing is get them out of the normal interview process. Get what you need to get. My biggest deal, I can learn everything I need to know. If it's a non-position, if I put you on the board and you take ownership, I could care less if it's all wrong. But if you can take ownership and convince me it's right, then I can teach you that part. I can teach you the football. That's easy to teach another coach. You can't teach integrity. You can't teach initiative. You can't really teach problem-solving skills. Like if an assistant coach calls me, I had a GA call me the other day, well, it's not working. And then I was like, well, why did I hire you, man? Figure it out.
Yeah. So to figure out, paint by numbers, we're interviewing Shep, and we're going to put him on the spot, get him off script, but we're also going to take him around campus to meet people to see if he's extroverted or not. And Probably need to get him around some kids too. I would love to have Shep watch an off-season workout. And I know you've been there, Keith, I'm sure, but I've had candidates watch an off-season workout and never speak to a child. Whoa, I'm not hiring that guy. I mean, you've got to find a way to talk to some kids, not the whole period, of course, but if you just stand there and watch workout and don't speak to a kid, that is probably a preview of your personality, that you're going to talk to your position group only and you're not going to talk to anybody else.
Yeah, like you said, there's a lot of different ways. I was already hired, right? John Ralston was our assistant AD at San Jose State, and he was a head coach for a long time in the 80s. It was cold one practice. I'm coaching DB, so my hands are out. I'm busy. I'm special teams, so I'm running all over the place. After the practice, we had a staff meeting. John addressed us. He was like our head coach's liaison, and he said, we should never see a coach with his hands in his pockets. That struck me because nobody ever told me that before, but I never thought about it, that, it was a little cold and my coaches were hands in pockets. And so this morning, the GA I was telling you about earlier, and if he's watching this, he knows who he is. We're out running, right? And I said, guys, just go out, be motivating, kind of four corner of the thing. And he's sitting there and doesn't say a word and has hands in his pocket. So after the workout, I come up to him and say, hey, if you want to coach, then coach. If you want to spectate, then spectate. But you can't be on our staff as a coach if you're not going to coach. And I kind of left it at that today.
So is it fair if I was interviewing Shep that I tell him this story? Because I would want to tell Shep this story of, hey, Shep, years ago, this happened. If I tell him this story, then he might know how to answer the question. How much do you let someone in on, here's what I want, or how much do you find out how they're about?
I think at the initial screening of all this, you don't really tell them what you're looking for at all. You want to see if it's going to be a fit naturally. If I tell you the answers to the test, you're going to know. If I tell you the answer to the test and you still fail the test, then every red flag in the world. But if you're somewhat aware, I don't want to tell you what I'm looking for. I want you to tell me what you are.
Oh, and I think I made that mistake a ton, that it wasn't the Matt Shepard show. I was kind of talking about our program and what I was looking for. And so I think what you just said is awesome. You can't give someone the answers to the test. Okay, we got a question here, Keith.
All right.
Interviewing for a high school football head coach, but his previous head coach position, he was non-renewed for political reasons with the superintendent. We've all been there.
Right.
Probably a great coach and superintendent. And how do you speak about that in an interview when it's going to come up? He's got to put on his application, have you ever been non-renewed? How does
number one? Okay. Yeah. So number one is be very open and transparent about why, as non-biased or as unbiased as possible, why there was a disconnect between you and your superintendent. If you did something wrong, own it early and explain how you'll rectify it in the future and what you learned from it. If it's something that's beyond that, it becomes, daddy ball type issues, address it in such a manner that, again, you're pointing out the elephant in the room, solving what you learned from that situation and how you plan on to not repeat that situation. As long as you hit it first, your narrative is going to beat theirs. The first story that parent, when the kid gets in trouble, I want to call the parent before the kid can. Because I want to lay the narrative of the story before the kid can sway the parent. If I'm in an interview and I know this question's coming up, I know there's prior history, I'm going to address that as early as I can and put my narrative on it, addressing the points of emphasis to show what I learned, how I grew, and why it happened.
So he should bring it up before they do.
I would.
Yeah, I agree.
Because they're going to know. I mean, if they brought him in, they already know.
Yeah.
What they don't know is his side. They know what they've heard.
And say it where you're not
you can't be pissed or mad at the other folks.
Yeah. If I interview someone and they're talking bad about their other head coach, like, no, you just have to be ultra professional.
I always go to this. This is what I always say. So I worked for Randy Jackson. We're making this up, by the way. He would never hire me. He didn't like me. He's at North Forney, and I need a job. I need to move to Dallas because that's where my family's at, and I'm leaving Florida. And I interview for a job. Randy Jackson hires me. From that point on, Every time I talk about Randy Jackson in any professional setting, here's what Keith Allen's going to say. He's one of the smartest head coaches I know because he hired me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No matter what, he was smart enough to hire me. So he's a smart guy. And that always puts a positive spin on anybody you've worked for.
Because if you say something negative, it's brutal.
You
Yes,
lose.
you lose. And
You don't have to say, I don't think he's the greatest offensive defense, but you can say he's a really bright, smart head coach, one of the smartest out there because he hired me. And if you're
great.
smart enough to hire me, you're smart.
Yeah,
You know?
and
That's kind of how I preface that.
You're not saying he's a man of integrity.
Absolutely not.
It's almost like you could read between the lines, but you are above board.
Right.
So
I think in any negative situation, you got to have a positive context, a positive story, and you can't lay blame because in every situation, there's a little bit of blame to go around on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And, you got to own it and spin it to your favor, but you got to own it.
Yeah.
Be transparent.
And Ben, let me say this. If any of these people in your interview have any experience at all, it's not that big a deal. We've all been fired if you've been in this thing very long. If you stand for something, then you're probably going to butt heads with people. The only people who are never fired are the ones who are the weak handshake, the ones who are in the middle of the road people. So don't worry about it, I guess, is what I'm saying. I got fired one time in 2002, and I thought I may never get another job again. It was a bump in the road, and don't worry about it too much. Okay, I'm going to just to honor your time, Keith. Give us, I didn't prep you for this question, but the billboard question that I love. If you could put a 100-foot billboard on the interstate about hiring the right staff, what would you put on that billboard?
There's a couple of things I could go with. Hire slow, fire fast, but make sure it's a staff hire. It's got to be a culture fit for your entire staff. If the 8 guys are in high school in Texas, if the 16 or 14 guys don't get along, it makes a miserable lunch period. It makes a miserable athletic period. It makes it miserable. So make sure they all, they don't have to be best friends. As a head coach, I never really fraternized with my assistants outside of work because I felt like there needed to be that space, but they need to be able to get along with everybody.
I used to tell my staff that if 2 people in this room didn't get along, the team is going to sense it, and I got to let one of you go. Is that fair?
Yeah, I transitioned 3 different times there to fill in different roles. But my second year, our offensive coordinator and O-line coach wouldn't talk. Well, that ain't gonna ever work. So then that's when I took over the O-line, and me and the OC, we hung out all the time, and our staff got a lot better because we didn't have that toxic person. On paper, he was a great coach. On paper, he had the resumes, he had the references, he had the pedigree. But when it came down to working with others, we found out he wasn't willing to listen to others. He wasn't willing to concede and work together. What I paid coaches at SBU was not very good. I had to let 2 coaches go. One left. The ones that left got bigger jobs. A guy went to the University of Tulsa to be DB coach there. I had a guy left to be a head coach at Central State, Ohio. But my guy stayed. And I think a lot of it is I gave him ownership and we got along and we had a great quality of life. So you got to make sure the guys you hire are going to fit that mold. Do the work you need to do, but don't grind for no reason. Go home when you're done. That's what I had a young coach we just hired last week asked me. He goes, "When do I leave?" I was like, "When you're done." And he goes, "When is that?" I was like, "I don't know. I'm not done yet, so I haven't left." But if you don't know, ask the OC. He'll help you. That kid got it. He understood. He went back, made a few more phone calls, did what he had to do, and then he left.
I used to have an assistant who would stop by my office and go, "Coach, you need anything?" Man. And that was his way of, like, that was kind of his exit ticket. I don't know who taught him that, but I loved it.
Well, I have 3 guys that do that right now. I didn't tell them to do that, but they know they saw one do it when they're leaving. Is there anything I need to do? No. I'll say, hey, you need to check the, silly stuff, right? Hey, that you need check to make sure those gates are locked. Make sure on your way out, check the gates. Or here's one for you in Kerrville, Texas. On your way out, make sure there are no deer on the.
Yeah. But here's the bottom line. As a head coach, sometimes I would have to walk around, and I'm the head coach. I'm not too good to do this, but 14 assistants have already left. I want to interview people who want to help me lock up the indoor facility where everybody just isn't going home. We all know what happened. People are going home and they're all thinking, well, so and so will do it.
Right.
Some other guy will lock up. I mean, you're having to walk around an indoor facility and make sure
Well, and
that.
that's where if you got the right guys, you address that in a staff meeting and then you spot check because one of the things you say it two different ways, and I keep forgetting one of them. But what you measure, you treasure.
Rate you replicate. Yep.
What's it? Yeah.
Yep.
And so I was like, if I make that a point of emphasis, are you helping me doing these other little things? If my staff is bought in, they're going to make sure they're going to daisy chain or whatever you call that phone tree and make sure everybody's on board without me getting, like I said, I don't have to be on that. I shouldn't have to be on that text, that group message to get that done.
No. And going back to your coordinators, because I think that was a great part of this conversation. Your coordinators shouldn't make you be the bad guy. You got to find coordinators who will say, hey, guys, we got to lock up the indoor. Coach shouldn't have one. And honestly, it wasn't me all the time. Usually it might be the receiver coach who will just go lock it up. But sometimes the other 14 will let one guy do all the work.
Always, everybody will let one guy do it. So there's some things you have to make sure as a head coach. I hired two strong coordinators. So 15 or 12 years ago at SBU, I was one of the oldest coaches on my staff. Today, I'm 51 years old, and my two coordinators are both older than me. Those are two former head coaches that can take their defensive staff and offensive staff and say, hey, this crap's got to get done. Keith shouldn't have to address this in a meeting and get pissed.
He shouldn't be the only one seeing the earring or whatever your rule is.
Right. Hiring experienced coordinators, and I think you and I are a lot alike on this, Randy. I've never worried about hiring people better than me at any position. I think that's my job. My job is talent acquisition. I need to hire the best talent. The head coach's job is talent acquisition. Hire guys that make me better.
Yes. And again, to go back, now we're in the coach's office really conversing here. It's not about hiring the smartest people. It's also about hiring the people who are the best fit. You have to enjoy being in the coach's office. That's what I miss the most about the North Forney coach's office. Man, that was greatness. And I miss it. And when you hire, you got to hire people that you want to be in that coach's office with. I got another question, Keith. What's the best way to prepare yourself to be a great interviewer when you become a head coach? Would sitting in interviews of other positions by your current head coach be beneficial?
Absolutely. Anytime you can learn. If I'm a coordinator, I would be asking to be on those interviews anyway, especially if it's my side of the ball. Going back to Eric Lester, be a plate cleaner. Ask your head coach to take as much responsibility for all that stuff. Ask to sit in the discipline meetings too, if allowed. Whatever your head coach lets you do at the high school level, you got to hire a football coach, but he better go coach softball, right? Or track. And he can't be just a lump on the log on those secondary sports. And I hate head coaches that hire crappy secondary coaches because I don't think you're good that way.
No.
I think you're a winner in everything you do. You're a winner in the classroom. You're a winner coaching football. You're a winner coaching softball. I got hired to coach softball, and I didn't know a damn thing about it. And I told the softball coach day one, I was like, I will learn. And I'll hit the mess out of fungos, and I'll learn how to front toss this crap, and I will help you. And I learned I learned all the stuff I could because that's who I am. But that's who you want to hire, guys that are going to be, you ready to coach pole vault. All right. I don't know a damn thing about pole vault, but I will freaking learn.
I hate the term second sport. No kid has a second sport.
Right.
Those softball girls, that was their sport. So let's don't use the term second sport. And I think this would be a great thing too. I would ask any head coach who is interviewing assistants, ask them if you can sit in with them. They'd be honored probably. It'd be interesting to see how a head basketball coach, when I was a coordinator, bring me your top two that you want to hire to be assistant basketball coach. I'm not going to hire them, but I want to be in on it. If you interview 4, I don't have to be in on that, but I'll help you with your top 2.
Right.
Yeah. I would ask to sit in on as many interviews as you can. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. I told my coaches, if you ever have an opportunity to interview for a job, go. Even if you're not interested, go, because it's more practice for you. What they'll learn is different nuances on the interview process. If we're doing our job is to help our coaches get to wherever they want to go. I've never been one to tell somebody you shouldn't interview for another job.
That's great.
And same deal. Like if I'm interviewing people and you show an interest, I'm going to let you sit in. I always had my OC sit in with me when I hired anybody on offense. When they were hired, Schreiner, I didn't have them on campus. So they didn't get to do it that way.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to deal with the O-line coach every day. My OC is. So they better have a good working relationship. I'm not going to be around the D-line coach every meeting, but my DC is. So they better have a good working relationship. You might have a way better coach, but if their personalities don't mesh, you're not going to get the best out of that coach. But if you have a good coach and you mesh, you can probably get all of that and then some to make him a great coach.
Yeah, because when you said this earlier, I don't care really what my O-line coach says on the board because we're really going to do it my way anyway. Now, if he can convince me his way is better, but we're going to overlap on double team. I believe in overlap, and we're going to overlap. Now, here's how we're going to do it. If you don't believe in this, please don't take the job. Your whole offensive staff or all your coordinators should meet this guy and hang out with him because it's all about the coach's office. Are we going to all enjoy being together in the coach's office? Coaching football is not rocket science. We're going to teach the technique we believe in anyway. You're not going to hire someone, Keith, at Schreiner who has a DB technique that you hate and go, well, you're the DB coach, so good luck.
No, I mean, every hire you've ever made for anybody that's hired coaches, each one's its own unique situation. But I'm big on derailing the conversation, getting them off topic, getting them off script, seeing how they interact with a lot of different people because you have a short amount of time to make a big assessment that's going to affect the trajectory of your program. So as many touch points as you can have with them in different situations so you can evaluate them. Like I said, walk the campus. Do they pick up trash? Do they avoid it? Do they make a comment? Do they make a snide comment about the way the campus looks? They say more and they act more on those type of walks between places because some people let that mental interview switch down.
That's so good, Keith. That's the best part of this conversation to me. That's what my take homes from this are. Don't let them just do a presentation. Get them all script. Get them out of the office. Have them meet as many people as possible. And because you made a great point, people don't like silence. So if you're on a golf cart riding around the campus, if you as the interviewer will just be quiet, they'll say something and you'll learn a lot about them. Man, this was great, Keith. We love Schreiner University football. We're rooting for the Mountaineers. Is there anything, if a coach has a kid, how do they get a hold of you? And how can they send a kid for you to evaluate their players?
Well, they can sports you me if they're on that. They can look at me up on Schreiner.edu. SUfootball.com. So I bought that website because nobody could spell Schreiner and nobody could spell Mountaineers. So you're asking high school kids to spell the word SchreinerMountaineers.com. So I just bought SU football because it was still available. Syracuse missed the mark, so we took it. So SUfootball.com gets you everything you need to know about us, or CoachAllen.com. As Deion Sanders says, I'm not hard to find.
Man, if anyone watching this is in Fast and Wide, Keith has some amazing sessions on how to game plan. He is Mr. Organization. He's done some elite coach mastermind stuff when I used to do that and really organized guy. So you are a stud, man, for making the time to do this, Keith. We got better today, buddy. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Enjoy it. We're here to help at Schreiner.